One of the keys is we gave them permission to feel two things at once. I said, I am not at all offended that you're excited he's coming as your pastor. He's not at all offended that you're sad I'm leaving. Both of those things are healthy emotions to feel, and you're going to feel both of them at once.
You've done something that's fairly unusual in announcing your succession. You gave a 3-year maximum window that said, I don't know that I'll be this long, but by this time I'll be gone. Yeah. You announced your successor. So there's been this almost a long period of mourning as Dr. York is leaving.
We have amazingly avoided that. And I'll tell you, I think one of the keys is that when we implemented the succession plan, I told the church, first of all, Chris Parish, who's my senior associate, is an incredible preacher. A lot of other big churches were coming for him. And I just think, man, he's a natural fit for Buck Run. And I thought, he's just the obvious choice. I would hate for some other church to get him, and 3 months later I announce my departure. And then they're going, well, boy, I wish we'd known this before we lost Chris. And I didn't want that to happen. So I told the church, I said, I think it's not fair to make him wait until I go to see if he's going to be the guy. And you probably don't want to lose him. So you need to make the decision now and let him know if he is indeed your choice to be my successor. And they voted by secret ballot, and with only 2 negative votes. And those were just 2 cranky old people who think that they could vote for me to not retire. One of the keys is we gave them permission to feel 2 things at once. I said, I am not at all offended that you're excited he's coming as your pastor. He's not at all offended that you're sad I'm leaving. Both of those things are healthy emotions to feel, and you're going to feel both of them at once. But we're going to do this, no drama, no trauma. I'm preaching through Romans, and when I get to the doxology of Romans 16, that's going to be my last sermon, and that's the way I'm going out.
So, going out, will you go out? Will you stay at Buck Run for a season?
We'll probably, for the time being, leave our membership there. I like tithing there. That's our community. We don't plan on moving from Frankfurt. I will say other things could happen. I don't know what God has in store. I really want to be a blessing to pastors. That's sort of the goal of this stage of ministry. I'm not resigning at Southern Seminary. I'll still be the dean of the School of Theology, still teach a full load in the classroom. But it will open up more time for me to help pastors. I want to do that. There could be some scenario in which we move and go somewhere else. But for the time being, we plan on leaving our membership there, and that's still sort of being our community. But I'm aware I'm the only guy that can mess this up, and I'm determined not to. I have hemmed myself in. I put myself on record so much that for me to go back on my word in any way and cause a problem would make me look like an unbeliever, and I'm not going to do that. And I have studied other transition plans, especially those that did not go well, and we're determined not to do that. In fact, I will tell you that the one common theme in those that didn't go well is that it was the guy going out that caused the problem. And Hershael York, by God's grace, is not going to do that. So I'm going on record here. I hope in the years in the future, someone looks back at this and said, look at that, he kept his word, because I sure plan to.
And that's what I've heard over and over again. The humility of the one leaving is the key to how successful it is. But don't you, there are going to be people who are going to come and say, Hershael, you know what he's doing.
Well, absolutely, because it happened when I came to Buck Run. I tell a lot of people the whole story about, I followed an incredible pastor. It's harder to follow a good pastor than a bad one, I believe. And people just said to me for the first 2.5 years, you're no Bob Jackson. And they mourned Bob Jackson. And then Bob had moved to another state. I'm confident people called him. I'm also confident that to every one of them, he said, Hershael York is your pastor. He's God's man. You follow him. And no one will ever hear anything other than that from me, because I'm confident, first of all, of the character, the integrity, and the ability of Chris Parish. And we've been real honest about it. I told him, I knew when people were saying to me, "You're no Bob Jackson," I was just like, man, just do your job, just be faithful. And one day they're going to look at somebody else and say, we love you, but you're no Hershael York. And Chris is braced for it. He knows it's coming. And I told him, just gut it out. Just get through that phase. One day they'll look at somebody else and say, we love you, but you're no Chris Parish. This is just the way that works. And you have to be mature enough to understand that. You're in a line of faithful preachers, and there is a grief when one leaves. There's a bond there. But just be faithful, and you'll be the guy. And I'm confident that will happen.
So if a young guy called you and said, I've candidated, I've got a call from this church. A pastor's been there for 38 years. He's stepping down. He's planning to stay active in the church. Yeah. Should I take the job?
That depends. Now, I did it. I will say the church that I first went on staff when I was 20 years old in Lexington, Kentucky, had only had in their history since 1916 only 2 pastors. One had been there 50 years. And then the second pastor was there 23. And I went on his staff 10 years before he resigned. So I was there for the last 7 of the last 10 of his years. I left after 7 years, went to seminary. Then they called me back as senior pastor. And I had been on his staff, and he had been my pastor, and now I was his pastor, and he and his wife stayed in the church. He never caused me a real problem. One time he stepped out of line a little bit, and a lady in the church went to him and said, "Please don't do that." And he said, "You're exactly right." So I never had to confront him. A lady in the church did it. I'll always be grateful to her. The other thing, the only difficulty I felt was every time you brought up, it was a very gray congregation. I was trying to make some changes, stuff he had not done or would not do. And every time I brought something up, you could just feel every head turn to see his reaction. Well, if I'm a member at Buck Run, I'm not going to attend business sessions. I'm not going to be there for people's head to turn toward to sort of try and read my reaction to it or anything. I can't imagine him doing anything I'm not totally supportive of. But again, I understand that sensitivity. I'm prepared to not put him in that spot, and I think he'll do fine. And so I would ask that pastor, how well do you know the outgoing pastor? And if he's a strong personality, if someone who resents stepping down, he can be a problem. There are challenges, but that's where you just have an honest face-to-face and ask him. You've got to gently find a way to say, "Are you going to be a problem, or are you going to be on my team, even when you don't like necessarily the style with which I do something?" If there's a doctrinal issue, that's a big matter. But a lot of times it's just simply a guy's style, or he wants to do something. The preferences and proclivities of a pastor become the bedrock convictions of the church after a while. He didn't like to do this particular thing with children's ministry or whatever. And somehow people begin to think, "Oh, that's a doctrinal conviction.
That's in the Bible.
We can't do that because, we never did that." And it's really just a quirky thing. To be able to walk people through that takes some wisdom. But if that former pastor's there and he won't free people up. I can remember back in my generation, it was like the King James Version. I grew up on the King James Version. When I quote scripture, it still comes out King James because that's what I grew up on as a kid. And, but there came a point where I was realizing that young people weren't reading the King James Version. It was just like a completely different language, and I made the switch. Oh, you would have thought we were offering sacrifices to Dagon in the temple. It was challenging for me to walk people through. you understand that that was translated 1611, and why would God just give the English-speaking people of the world their own version? I mean, to just walk people through the whole thinking about translations, but if they'd never been confronted with it, it was a challenge. And their former pastor had always used King James. So that's one issue of those things that really are preferences, but they can sure become doctrinal in the minds of people. And you have to have wisdom to deal with that. And if the former guy's still there, that can be an issue. So you need to think about that ahead of time.